Good evening to everyone, and thank you for being here with this conversation that we're having this evening with Becca Stevens on her book, Tea and Justice. And I'm excited. I bought this book a couple of months ago because as I was visiting the Thistle Farms store to find a gift for someone, I was unaware that the book was out. But tea and justice are like my two favorite things. So I was like, what a great combination. And so I'm excited to meet Becca for the first time. I totally admire everything you have done. I visit the cafe often and have tea. That's what I go there for. When I want to host somebody for tea, we go to the cafe. But it's just amazing about what you've done, how you've changed women's lives and the landscape here in Nashville. And now you've written this book. So I just think that's awesome. I appreciate you for being here this evening and taking the time to be with us. I also want to thank Danielle Nellis, who is a trooper who stepped in at the last minute to host and moderate this tonight, as our previous person had a family event that kept her from being here. So thank you, Danielle. It's good to see you, my colleague. And I just want to welcome you all here to another fabulous WPC event that is produced by our fabulous executive director, Joyce McDaniel. And you can always join us at our events. We would ask that you consider being a member. Membership has its privileges. For $75 a year, you get firsthand knowledge to everything that we're doing and discounts to participate in different events that we're doing, and just get to support an organization that is really out here advocating for women and children and families. So please consider joining. You can join us at WPCTN.com is our webpage. That is where you can find a link to become a member. And it is also where you will find information about upcoming events. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Danielle.
Wow, thanks, Stephanie, so much. When I saw that this book club was happening, immediately registered, and I am privileged to be asked to moderate in the stead of Sarah Lee Woods this evening. I too love tea and justice, so I'm excited to have this conversation. I am excited to have this conversation with Becca Stevens, who, for most of you on here, needs no introduction. But from her bio, very briefly, she says that she is a speaker, social entrepreneur, author, priest, founder of 10 Justice Initiatives, and president of Thistle Farms. She's been featured in myriad news outlets, and she has been doing this work for over 25 years. She's been a leader in mission-driven work. She says that she has an average-sized glass of that is overflowing with love. And I think if you have delved into this book, you certainly see her love and passion for the work that she continues to do, but that she chronicles here in the book, Tea and Justice. Becca, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I want to know where Stephanie is from.
Steph, where are you from?
Hold on, I muted myself. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, but I have been in Nashville, about to tell my age, since high school, so over 30 years. So I consider Nashville home.
Awesome.
Yeah, why do you ask?
Oh, because I was thinking your accent, I was trying to figure out where your accent was, if it was Nashville or somewhere just outside of Nashville.
Yeah, so my family, I have the most country accent in my whole family by far. They really kind of talk about me. They don't know where it came from, but a Southern drawl is what my mom kind of says. But yeah, originally Louisville, Kentucky.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank y'all for the introduction. It's so good to be with y'all. And I love what you do and I love what you stand for. And I'm really here because of Maria. I'm a huge Maria fan, and she has been very kind to us in all our justice initiatives. So Maria, I want to start with thanking you. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, everybody. I know some of you guys, so it's fun to see your names, even if y'all are not showing your faces. Y'all are a shy group, I guess.
Well, hopefully they won't be too shy, and we'll get them started here. In your book, Becca, you say on page 94 of the the soft one, the paperback. You say, the cup we have been given is always sweetened when we ground ourselves in gratitude. So I just want to start off with what you are grateful for and why today. And then everybody else, if you'll just pop that into the chat, what are you grateful for today?
So, I don't even know where to begin with that, because I do think that gratitude is the grounding for all the healing we know in our whole lives. If you can get to gratitude, you can get to a lot of other things. There's a million stories about that, but even with all that I went through as a kid and growing up, and I went through a whole bunch of stuff, including the death of my father, killed by a drunk driver when I was 5, including years of abuse. There were so many people that offered me so much grace and mercy in my life and forgiveness and all of those things. And I feel forever grateful. And sometimes I think, like when you've done work, y'all know this, for decades, you can get in a place where you forget that you came because you needed it. You came because you wanted it. You came because, this was your hope. And then you can get grateful again. Like, I get to do it. So sometimes I'm not inspired. Sometimes I'm irritated. Sometimes I'm all of that. But truly, I start with feeling grateful, and it does make things a lot easier and sweeter. And to me, it also moves us from feeling broken into feeling compassionate. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
If I can move from like whatever it is to gratitude, I can start feeling really compassionate for people and less judgy.
Mm-hmm.
When I quit doing that, I get in trouble. Today, a woman came by Thistle Farms. Her name is Jordan. And Jordan graduated maybe 8 or 9 years ago from Thistle Farms. And I was doing a Facebook Live, and she walks through the store, and she just comes right in the screen immediately. And Jordan's had her ups and downs, and I've been frustrated with her. And, she's gone through a bunch. She came to us when she was like 19 or 20, and she was, just had a baby, and her adopted mom was helping her raise it. She had been born in Brazil and lived in a, orphanage. She lived in an orphanage, and she says things were done to her that were inhumane. I mean, just that you wouldn't do to a dog. That's how she says it. And this child was her light. And 5 years into her recovery, her 5-year-old daughter died in a pool accident. And she went off the deep end. She's been in and out, but I haven't seen her in several years. I mean, she's been doing really, really well. And she came today, and she goes, you know what tomorrow is? And I was like, no. And she goes, it's her birthday. I mean, it's the anniversary of her death. That's what it was. And I just needed to come back and give y'all a hug and be with people who knew her. And I felt so grateful that beyond all the other stuff that had happened, she felt safe to be there. She felt safe to come back, and we could all hug, and she could interrupt anything and do anything. So there's a lot of different responses you have, but when you practice gratitude, it's like you can get there really quickly. Mm-hmm. And just be like, okay, we're stopping what we're doing. Hello, Facebook family. Hello, whatever, a couple thousand people. Here's Jordan. So I think that the faster we can get there, the better. That's my only point.
That is awesome. You talk about light in your book, and light as a part of T, right? There's darkness and there's light. How do you see that manifesting over these years since you wrote the book?
The darkness and the light of
Okay. So you say, and I'll just quote, I love this, that light is always there. It's just that sometimes we have to walk through death and letting go to behold it. So for example, Jordan's story here, that she had, her daughter was her light, but she also lost that light, but had to reclaim it, or seeing it in her memory. Tell us stories of how you've seen that over the past, almost 10 years since you wrote this book.
So, for me, the whole idea of darkness and light, it is obviously the yin and yang. It's the whole journey. And I think probably everybody on this call, I don't know what people are feeling, but there was plenty to grieve, in 2020. And if you weren't grieving, you probably weren't paying attention. But for me, there was so much light even in that. Do y'all know what I mean? Like, I mean, I lost a ton of money. I was off the road. It was hard. I have a musician family. It was really a jolt for us. We lost friends, people in the church to COVID. There was all of that. But then there was this beautiful light that was happening. I mean, you saw literal light coming, the skies were clearer than they've been. And, not only did you have time to slow cook, you had time to slow clean and slow cook. I mean, slow think, slow everything. And so for me, at least, no matter how we're going through things, there is some light.
Mhm.
And I think light is probably related to your first question about gratitude, which makes me think you're a very positive person that you're asking these questions about light and gratitude. Because I can talk about darkness too, but I will say that the whole reason for the cafe was about that light. It's all based on being this welcoming light, this joy. And for me, we've been making products, we have been helping women come off the streets, we've been doing all this healing work, but like we weren't really inviting people into that light. I mean, we start with the light of a candle in a circle, literal light every day. And we say, we light this candle for the woman on the street and the woman trying to find her way home. And I was trying to think of a way to bring the community in a really healing way. And so it made sense to have a cafe. And I was so, unprepared for it. But I knew in my heart that, this beautiful, lavish, light-filled cafe where Stephanie and 70,000 other people can bring people into that space and remember the joy, even in the midst of the struggle of justice and the struggle of, systems and addictions and mental health stuff. You could feel that light.
Mhm. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. The book is entitled The Way of Tea and Justice. If you could just encapsulate in a few sentences, what is the way of tea and justice?
So the word is chado, meaning the way of tea. And it's the principle upon which the cafe is built, although probably not half the people working there would say the word chado. But it really is about, the way of tea is about intention. I mean, 3 major religious philosophical groups in the world use it for ritual. It's communion. It's, if you've ever been to a tea ceremony, everything is so set and ritualized. And it means that you can do something simple, but when you do it with very specific intention about whatever, light, about gratitude, about simplicity, about focus. I mean, that's why you get 2 flowers in a vase and people see it as stunning. And so for me, the way of tea was about, one, really about trying to help connect these universal issues, both of, human trafficking, prostitution, but also plants that are universal and, have long histories of cultivation. And it felt like that tea was the plant that we needed to connect to most because it had such a violent history. It had such a history with drugs and oppression. And if we can free tea, then that was the way. And so we were going to be intentional about it. What I didn't realize was how bad the tea industry still was, and finding good teas that were, dignified to the pickers and the producers, the blenders, all of those folks along that huge market chain that tea goes through. That was the toughest part. And we ended up starting 2 different tea companies. That was crazy. That took forever.
I was going to say,
It took Hal Cato coming into the cafe. He came in 5 years ago and he rebuilt it so that it was, really on par with what the idealism and the goals were for the way of tea. I mean, I had the ideas, but I didn't have at that point, we only had maybe $200,000 to build it out. So we were, scraping everything together. And then when Hal came in, we did $1 million campaign and renovated the whole building. So now it is more Chateau than it was.
I was saying it's absolutely beautiful. It's one of my favorite places to go, just like Stephanie said, to go and get tea. I found myself there just last week. How has the way of tea, this Chateau, informed your decision making, particularly in those big transitions of remodeling the cafe, entering into a pandemic, expansion, and things of the sort?
That's a great question, because all of that has, changed so much. When everything shut down, Thistle Farms manufacturing did not have to shut down. We were considered essential. Maybe. I think it's essential, but I don't know. But I mean, we were able to make hand sanitizer.
Pretty impressed that you got that.
We got it quick. That stuff, all of it is so easy to make. I swear. If people knew, like, a candle is soy wax and essential oil. That's it. I mean, people can make their own candles. And that's what's so funny about, I've learned about marketing, is that you can buy, we private label candles for several groups, the same candle, and it's $30 or $45, depending on what label is on the outside. And it's the exact same stuff on the inside. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know how marketing works and how that happens. That wasn't the question, though. It was about, what was it?
How the way of tea has informed you through these many transitions.
Got it. I'm with you. So oh my gosh, so many ways. What I would say, I think one of the myths that's out there around justice is if you do things and it's in the name of justice, then you have to do a really crappy job. In other words, I really mean that, especially in social services, like look at the way the shelters are built versus cathedrals, and how radical it would be to build a shelter like a cathedral. That would be Chateau. Yeah. Everything with intention. So if the intention is that you want people to feel worthy and loved, a shelter's not a great place to go.
Mm-hmm.
Or warehousing people is not a great way to make changes in people's lives. And it happens all the time. I see it all the time. People want to, here's my used bras, or here's this or whatever. And it's like, how about you keep those and send the money to get really nice stuff for people or something like that. That would be just a specific example. But I would also say that for us, what I try to do sometimes is imagine what people might want, or I might want if I was in that situation, and have that conversation so that the intention matches the need. And what we realized when so much was shutting down during the pandemic was women were feeling safe at home. It was some of the most peaceful months ever. I mean, families were not getting together. Some of the biggest triggers for women were not happening. And they said for the first time in their life, they weren't stuck at home. They were safe at home. And so many folks had compromised systems that really what the intention that we needed to do was to be around food safety for the women. So and Maria knows this because she donated to it, the front porch pantry we started. And I have 3 sons who were all at home. Again, they were all back in the nest. Thank you, God. Not really. But so they started being the delivery men for the front porch pantry. And we got tons of donations that all came to my front porch, and we left it on people's porches. So there was no contact with people. It's so funny. I don't know if y'all can even remember. Do y'all remember you had to wear like rubber gloves to handle all the food in the boxes because you thought you were getting COVID off of it? All of us ended up with COVID, by the way. We got 100% COVID in the family. But we all did pretty well. We all did fairly well. I still can't smell right, but that's my only lingering symptom. And I don't even, except for the candles, I'm not that sad about it. But for me, it was, what is the thing that we need to do? So you go from thinking, I need to be starting these organizations. I mean, I started COVID in a refugee camp in Mexico, in the asylum seeker camp Matamoros. When they shut us down on March 12th, I was in the camp and they gave us a few hours to get out and get across the border. It was shut. It was over. And I went from that kind of large view into really small view, like, okay, here's enough food to make 4 meals for the week, and boxing those up and delivering them. And they're both beautiful, but they're really, really different.
Wow.
I want to say one more thing though, is that, and I don't know if any of y'all feel this way sometimes, but you can go through periods where, you know, even the best intentions don't really carry you through, if you know what I mean. I mean, you can get stuck on a Netflix thing and it's just over. I mean, it's over until the series is done. I mean, thank God they don't go on forever. Thank God there's limited series on stuff. But what I'm learning is that even when I'm not able to follow through on an intention, what I can do is trust that if I keep doing my work, that will come back. You know, the inspiration, the intention, the joy, the light, the gratitude. So I really, even through COVID, really trusted in my work. Like, I'm just going to keep doing the work, even if I'm not doing it as well, or I'm quitting at 3 p.m, whatever.
One step at a time.
Did y'all do that?
Yes. Yeah. Wake up every day, take one more step, take one more step, take one more step until you get to where you need to go. And it's hard to take those steps sometimes. Sometimes it feels like you're dragging your feet through mud. Sometimes it feels like there's brick walls thrown up in front of you to get it done. But yeah, taking that one step matters.
Get up every day and do virtual school for 385 days.
Today was the last day, Joyce. Today was the last day. I did a dance when I picked him up. I said, bless the Lord and hallelujah. We are done. It's too much.
It's a lot. It is a lot.
It was a lot. So I have, in writing this book, this really chronicled your journey to the cafe. And one of the things you said in here is that you knew you needed more language, more history, more context to understand all the layers of meaning, but even with your limited knowledge, you could sense the beauty and meaning in the deepest parts of your being on this journey. What are some areas that, given the current climate, politics and pandemic and policing and preaching and all of those areas in your life, what are some areas where you feel like you need more language, or you need more history, or you need more context?
Oh my gosh, you're very good at asking questions. But I would say that, I mean, all of us, you know, for everyone in this beautiful Zoom call, you know, I think it just shows an open heart and wanting to learn more about wherever we are, even if we don't even always know the topic. You know, for me, I think sometimes people, especially in the Christian tradition, think that our job is to change the world. So we think we have to know everything and then get people to believe like we do. And I'm really aware, I'm celebrating 30 years as a priest right now, 30 years. And I'm pretty aware, and I go talk to all kinds of groups and all kinds of places. And I'm like, too Christian or not Christian enough for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, people want you to think or want you to believe what they believe. And I think that the calling in the gospel is to love the world, it's not about changing it, it's about loving it. And so if I need to love the world, I have to be willing to learn and change in every area. I have to listen to every story of a woman coming through, not like, oh my God, I have heard this war story 1,000 times, but I haven't heard your story. So I want to learn and get knowledge just of, you know, where's your accent coming from? What happened? How did you get here? Tell me the story. And I'll learn a ton and I'll be better for it. So it's not just for me, it is probably, you know, more about addictions. I could do a lot more work in that, tons more around racism, tons more around, one thing I can't ever get in my life is I I think I was so opposed to studying war that I've missed out on a whole bunch of history.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
a lot of history.
well, because they tell the story of history by war to war to war to war, which
Mhm.
is a ridiculous way in my mind to understand really what the lessons of history have been so rich and so much has been lost. So of course there's big areas, but then for me, what the area I really try to work on is if I can love somebody, I can learn from somebody. And I don't care if you're the president or you're coming in off the street. I can learn. And if I can stay open to that on my best days, and my coworkers staying open when they're missing the point, in my opinion, oh my gosh, that is so good to say, I can learn from this person. I need to be quiet and learn. It's big.
That is a big deal.
Oof.
And it's interesting that you bring up that point towards the end of The Way of Tea and Justice. You mentioned the story of the two gentlemen who were helping you unload the cabinets that you'd picked up from the prison, and how you just wanted them to sit down and have this tea with you. And you spent 15 minutes trying to convince them that they should have this tea with you. You must have this tea with you because you are a tea evangelist. And you, with an exclamation point, say, that's messed up, right? That way of thinking. But in just your statement here, you've shown such an evolution in your thinking, like recognizing that, yes, I want you to agree with me or see my point of view, but I also see that you have a point of view and other people have points of views, and that's okay. And I just have to accept them and love them for it and love them through it sometimes. So that's awesome.
Well, it was really funny because I kind of got on the wrong foot when I was a tea evangelist. And, you know, I tell the story in that book about one of the heads of one of the largest foundations in Nashville, Tennessee, who had funded us several times. And I went to him and said, you know, we want to open this cafe. And so he came, and I told this in the book, you know, he came and he made a cup of tea, and he left the loose leaf tea bag in the tea for like 20 minutes. The whole time we were talking, it was all I could do not to reach over and just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the worst cup of tea you've ever had. But he was lecturing me the whole time, lecturing me about sometimes less is more. And what we do is we make bath and body care products, and we don't need to be trying this whole new place because we really don't have that right yet. And he went on and on about just, you know, we don't have any experience in restaurant stuff. We don't have any, you know, just all the problems. And it was several years later, I realized that that foundation was having their board meeting in the cafe. They were in there in the cafe, and I know he was there saying that they had funded Thistle Farms, but what I wanted to say was like, you know, what changed your mind, or how did you fall in love with it? What was it? You know, I mean, like, I'm so interested, but I don't want to bring it back up to him. But I do think it's like, you know, for me, I can hold on to those negative things a very, very long time. Like when someone tells you no, or someone says whatever, you know, 10 people can say it was a good sermon. One people can get really mad, and one person get mad and write you a mean email. And I'll remember the one email for a very, very long time. And so the evolution has to be, and I'm not there yet, you know, I probably still have a couple more years, but really letting both those things go, as neither one of them are probably true. Like it's the most amazing sermon or it's the worst sermon. It was probably an okay sermon, you know. And the truth is the cafe was one idea. It's not the best idea. It was a good idea. It's worked. I've had other ones that haven't, but you just, to grow and to get there in that evolution, like you're talking about, I have to I don't know if anybody maybe I'm saying this because somebody here might need to hear that you got to let something negative go. You just have to, or else it will, you know, you'll see somebody 3 years later and go, do you remember when you said to me?
I love that. I love that. You've talked so much in the past few minutes about evolution and growth. What has been the biggest change in your life in the past 10 years? Because it really has been about 10 years since you wrote this book. I know, I think the copyright on it is 2014, but the cafe opened prior to that. And so we're pushing on almost a decade at this point.
Yeah, that seems crazy. Really me moving from running Thistle Farms to running the global program of Thistle Farms has been the biggest change. So before, it's like you're managing the staff, you're managing all that. It ended up, that we didn't have a CFO, we have a CFO now. We didn't have a CEO, we have a CEO now. We have one of the most capable residential managers who had graduated the program, graduated college, graduated, what's it called? Her master's in social work, MSSW. All of that happened so that I could say, I'm going out here now. I want to do this work because I do the best. Like when I can create something and make it small and be in community with people. That's my absolute favorite. I always think I'm born for the place where arts and crafts and justice come together.
When did you recognize that?
Oh, I mean, if you could see what I'm working, let me see my table. So here's some yarn. Hold on. Here's some duct tape wallets I'm making. Here's a macrame planter that I've been working on. Here's a weaving project I've been working on. I've been doing it my whole life. Like if I'm doing something, like I'll be in a meeting and I'll be, making socks and knitting. I don't even know where the rest of the stuff is. But anyway, you get the point. I've been doing it my whole. Are you working on something, Joyce?
I'm labeling 1,000 envelopes while this is going on.
You got to keep going. Because, in my opinion, what I've learned is that I don't have to apologize for that stuff where I really thrive. I can lean into it and make a life and make a difference doing that stuff. So, I've done since this book, I've really gotten in, not just into tea, which I think of many ways as kind of being a craft too, like how you craft tea and blend it and do all of that, that there's really a revolutionary crafts, and to learn how to be about creative justice. We teach creative language, creative writing, and it's like, let's get creative in justice. So I've been doing that, and I've been studying it and learning about like how the AIDS quilt changed the conversation in the United States of America around AIDS, how the women in Chile under Pinochet, when the children went missing, they started creating those beautiful quilted squares that were from the fabric of some of their children, and how, it helped the whole world be aware of what was happening there. Or how the women in Oaxaca who took their 7,000 or 4,000-year-old pottery and started really making it a true artisan craft that sells for so much money around the world. And they were able to fight gang violence, and cartels in Oaxaca, Mexico. I mean, there's tons of stories. So the big one we did was in 2017. I wanted to go to the refugee camp in Greece to work with women coming out of Syria. And so, we got, again, we had one donor. It ended up that we became friends with Wendy Schmidt, whose husband, started Google. Do y'all remember?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all remember Google? And so I went out to California and said, look, this is what we want to do. She had a real heart for all the women and kids leaving Syria and coming to Greece. And so she funded it. What are all you crafting?
Ignore my questions. That's just to get the crew chatting.
So we went, and there were 7 of us. Ended up, I was a CNN top 10 hero that year, along with a woman who was the first woman granted asylum from Jordan because of her sexuality and the threat to her safety. And she spoke perfect Arabic. And I was like, will you go to Greece with me? And she was like, yes, I will. So we go, and we took a weaver from North Carolina, several of us from Thistle Farms, a graduate, and we went and we said, what we want you to do is take the life vests that you left Greece with and start weaving. And we wanted to make a connection between, again, human trafficking and refugees. 12,000 young women missing in the refugee camp. So then they also started taking the blankets the UNHRC gives them when you land. When you land, the United Nations gives you this gray blanket. So we stripped the blankets, stripped the life vests, and we started weaving. And people, every NGO said, there'll be a riot in the camp if you just invite non-women, and you can't pay and you can't hire refugees in the camp. And it was like, well, people have Venmo, you can pay them. It's not hard to do. There's no thing to stop you. So 9 women came together, and within about 2 or 3 days, we had completed our first welcome mat. And they were beautiful and powerful. And I called a friend in California and said, look, I'll sell you this first mat for $300. And he goes, okay. And I was like, oh, shoot, I should have said 500. I should have said 500. And we did it. And the women started renting buses for the entire camp to get people out. They started, People Magazine did a story on it. The first week we did it, we had back orders for a long, long time. And then Banksy saw the welcome mats and fell in love with them, the artist Banksy. And he said, can I take this idea and redesign it? Well, same women, same idea, but he just wanted to weave the word welcome on a mat with the life jacket. We were like, absolutely. And they started selling for $500 a piece. They went up to 50 women. They started 5 new organizations in the camp. But it was this idea of like this, you have an idea, and I had the space and the freedom to execute it. And then, it's its own 501c3 now called Love Welcomes out of the UK. Abby Hewitt runs it. You should all buy a welcome mat. But it's this beautiful way to, change how you do the work, but it's still kind of the same nature of the work. It looks really different to be sitting in a refugee camp versus being in Nashville.
How do we, or what would you suggest as a way that we broaden our perspective on how we do our purposeful work?
Well, I really do think you can't think outside the box if you don't get outside your box. So, form follows function, right? And so if we're functioning outside the box, the form fits that better. So, to me, it's important to have daily rituals. It's important to make space, but to find the place where to find new places, or maybe it's old places you haven't been in a while, to have the space to let your thoughts expand. If it's in a board meeting room, that's where the spirit goes to die.
Yeah.
Seriously. That's where people will go like, that's not a good idea. Don't even be thinking that. How are we going to afford that? Blah, blah, blah. It just starts like, nee, 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 and it's like, it's gone. But what I think is that if you find a space where like your idea has time to float around in you, and then it can come out and it starts taking on shape and ideas, and then you find a really safe community like this to share that idea and say, I trust y'all enough. I know all the issues already. You don't have to tell me them, but let's find a space where I am outside the box. So my thoughts are outside that box. And because I think you need community to execute any good idea, or else it's just your idea, and that's how revolutions start, but they get other people to join. Revolution starts with a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that crazy to me? That's crazy to me. And, thinking about how sharing that thought and starting small and then growing it into something that's powerful is amazing. Mm-hmm. It's George Floyd, it's Me Too, it's all of those things that start, and that it builds. And that's what I'm interested in, is seeing how you go from saying, this is where I'm doing and I have a purpose and I have a way of doing it, to finding both your thoughts and a community where that purpose can flourish.
I love that. And that's echoed, I forget the young woman's story in this book where she came with nothing, but she came to Magdalene and she came with the idea and specific goals that she was going to do. She was going to recover, she was going to get set free, she was going to get her degrees. These things were going to happen. And in the book, you say that she found a community that supported, not just supported, but really like valued those ideas. And so that really resonated with me when I read that book. I know all of us here probably have something in the pipeline, something coming down the road that we want to happen, we want to do, but we need community to do it. We cannot carry that solo. No good idea goes by itself.
No, I mean, community is the oldest entity the world knows for healing. Period. It's the oldest entity. Community, serves its purpose because it holds us accountable. Like, let's say Penny has this way that she wants y'all to get involved in something and she brings it to the group. It then holds her accountable. Do you know what I mean? If you say it out loud, you get held accountable. And then also it may hold Penny up. She shared this idea and she's going through a hard time and the community can come around her. So it holds you up, it holds you accountable. And then finally, there's something mystical about a group. And I only really know groups of women, to be honest with you. I'm not in like tons of small communities where there's a lot of guys, but I would say that what I've experienced is that if there's 4 individual people and you come together with a common goal as a community, there's like a 5th spark there. And so it's community that is the sum that's greater than its parts. There's something that happens around that energy that brings new life and spirit into it. And that's, again, community, not committee. Committees don't do that same thing. But a community around shared goals, it can heal burnout if you do it well.
Wow.
It can heal, a lot of trauma. You can move from traumatic stress into traumatic growth, which is powerful stuff. And that's what I've seen is that, we focus so much on the trauma that we forget when we're coming together, that you bring all of that and, you have some gifts and you have some skills that you've built up and nobody can stop you.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm going to transition now to ask you about the forthcoming book. In your Thistle email that I think got sent out a couple of days ago, you said during this pandemic, you got to slow write the book you have always wanted to write. What is that book? We need to know.
Yes, and I'm happy to come back and talk about that book. It comes out September 14th. Anybody can pre-order it on Amazon. It's called Practically Divine. And it was so much fun to write. So I took a bunch of my mom's old sayings. So my mom was Ann Stevens, and she ran St. Luke's Community Center here in Nashville, Tennessee for years after my dad died. She died at 62. She was young when she died, but she was amazing. And she was just a badass, hard ass woman. I can't even describe. I mean, she was widowed at 35 with 5 kids and working in daycare. You can imagine her stress. And we were all born in Connecticut and New York. So, I mean, Stephanie, I hear you on the Southern accent and, Southern accent from New York, I was born in Milford, Connecticut. But she had all these sayings she would say, and they're just nuts. And then, so I started asking people about some of their mom's old sayings. And they're awesome, how they stick with you, how you remember them, how they come up and you can hear it in your head, even when you're not. So I use that as kind of the through line, named the chapters after it, and went back to the past and dissected kind of what the truth is and what we need to let go of. But I got to talk about, this, everything that feels practically divine. And I mean that word. Like, it's very practical stuff. My mom was a very practical person, but practically means also almost, practically divine. You're not really divine. You're kind of almost and usefully divine. But I go through the whole journey thinking about what does it mean for us to embrace our both divinity, our practicality, our earthliness, and let go of some of that stuff, those not helpful sayings, and also those really helpful sayings that can pull us through. And I try to do it with a lot of storytelling, humor, things I've learned over, these all these years. And like, I don't know if y'all did this, but during the pandemic, I even cleaned out drawers. Did y'all clean out any drawers? And I found shit I didn't know I had. I mean, for real, didn't know I had.
And didn't need, because you haven't seen it in years.
No. And I would find stuff like I found this tiny prayer book that's like this big and this little, full of prayers from World War II that my mother had. And I don't know how I got it. I don't know how it was in this drawer, but it was stuff like that was coming up. And, I was remembering, I've talked in almost every book about this past experience of child sexual abuse from about the age of 6 to about the age of 9. And then I started remembering that really was just the first experience. There were several experiences after that, which is what happens to kids. But I kind of just used that one experience. And so I was able to really look at like, how did I get myself in those situations several different times? And what is it in this world that picks on kids who have trauma? And so I look at some of the hard stuff too, not just some of the easy stuff. Yeah. But it's really good. It ends with a vision of a feast that's practically divine and how we get to have a feast. I talk about what I was going through in COVID in kind of real time and coming out of it. And it's with HarperCollins. And today, this is my big news. So today, Isabel Allende just endorsed the book. And she hasn't endorsed a book in like 6 or 7 years. And I'm friends with the Isabel Allende Foundation, and they've supported our global work forever. And I wrote them and said, I want this endorsement. And they were like, she just doesn't do it. And I said, okay, well, can y'all do it? And just say, you work for Isabel. And they wrote me back today and said, here's Isabel's blurb. You may read it to you?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Congratulations. Yes.
Thank you. Hang on. Let me see if I can remember my password.
That is exciting and wonderful news. And the way you described this book with such passion, I cannot wait until September when it comes out. And we definitely all need to go pre-order. If you have the link, or Joyce, if you have the link, if somebody can drop that in the chat so we can know where we need to go pre-order this book, Practically Divine, so that our October book club can be this next book.
Can we get it through Parnassus, our local bookstore?
Yes, in September.
Yes.
September 14th. And I'm doing their 615 thing.
Yes.
Oh, good. You're doing 6. So can we can probably pre-order from Parnassus too.
Yeah. So here it is. This is what Isabel Allende said. I'm just going to put this by my bed. These are the moving stories of broken women and wounded communities healed by the immense power of practical love. No one knows more about redemption than the author, pastor, activist, and speaker Becca Stevens, having herself experienced the trauma of sexual abuse, poverty, and death. Becca has spent decades working for and with women survivors. It's a life spent in unconditional service and joyful faith. Practically Divine is a prayer book, a manual for living with an open heart.
Wow. I know. Round of applause. Round of applause. Oh my goodness.
Anyway, I'm done. I've done it. Isabel read my book. I'm done.
Yes. Life goals, or as I think the kids say, goals. Just
I really
goals.
do like her writing.
Yeah. Oh, it's fabulous. It's fabulous. Well, before I open up the floor for questions, I just want to pause for a moment. As I was reading through this book, first and foremost, I wanted tea all the time. Every page I turned, I was like, where's a cup of tea to go along with reading this book? But in preparing for this book discussion, I was called into this space because of a loss by Sarah Lee Woods, who was originally scheduled to moderate I also found out over the weekend that my best friend from college passed away. And so she was an absolute warrior for justice. She was the public policy director for the Southern Center of Human Rights based out of Atlanta. And her colleagues said that if there was any progressive criminal reform in Georgia, her footprint and her handprint were all over it for the past several years. So I pulled out my teacup. I've been sipping on it, but if you have your tea or your water, or just want to pause with me, or if you have someone who is on your mind and you would like to remember, go ahead and put their name in the chat. We'll all just pause for a moment and take a sip for those who have gone on but shared their light with us while they were here. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. So does anyone have any questions for the amazing Becca Stevens, who has certainly inspired us and given us jewels and words of wisdom this evening? Yeah, Maria.
I'm excited about the new book. First of all, Danielle, you've done a fabulous job.
Well, thank you. Thank you, friend.
What would your sons, I know you have just 3 amazing sons. What would their story be? The tidbit from you as the mom. You said you were going and asking other moms, other people what their mom's stories and quotes and sayings were. What are your sons going to say about you? What are their sayings going to be?
I need to ask them that. What a great question. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I can totally, one of the stories I tell is about my mom used to not say anything in the morning, but like on Saturday morning, she'd be vacuuming around your bed at 6 a.m. Vacuuming around your bed. And I just thought it was always so kind of rude. And you would kind of wake up and she would go, "What are your goals? What are your goals? What are your goals for the day? What are we like? What's your plan?" It's like, I don't know. But she was so like, let's get it going. Let's do it. And I definitely, I had this, my son was home from college during the pandemic and he was sleeping. And I found myself vacuuming in his room because I wanted to get it done before I went to work. And I'm like, I am my mother. I bet I've repeated everything she has said to my own children. But I hope the good thing they remember is I just have always, just said, err on the side of mercy. Whenever you have a doubt, just go for that. And I've said that many, many times. And they'll probably also remember me saying all of them growing up, because I've been a pastor longer than I've been a mom. And I think they'll remember growing up, me going like, trying to get them to behave at the communion rail, going, "The body of Christ." Clenched teeth, like, you need to pay attention. And, I don't know what they'll remember. Clean up your mess. I don't know. What is Owen going to remember?
Have you done your homework? Have you done your homework?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Mine will be, is your bed made before you can eat breakfast?
One of I've heard a million of them. There's so many funny ones. I could go on all night about it, but I won't. But there's, and my mom used to mess up sayings all the time.
Yeah.
She would go out of the frying pan into the oven.
Yeah.
And it was always like, that sounds good, or whatever. You didn't get it right. And she used to say lightning at the end of the tunnel. I can see lightning at the end of the tunnel.
That's definitely not something you want to run towards.
No, it's like, she was crazy. But anyway, I think that I'll answer one more question. Then I have one thing I want to say to you guys before I leave.
Do we have another question?
Jeannie, do you have a question?
No, I have 2 boys. I'll be interested to see what they say about me too. But
It would be fun to ask your kids what they remember. I hadn't even thought of that. It's a great question. So all I want to say is this to you guys. Really, what you're doing is so beautiful and important, and not just in the work, but in joining together and exploring and being together. That's the best things that you can be doing. And so many of y'all have done so many great, great things. And just keep going, even when you don't feel like it. And one time when I got really sick of everything, I was on an airplane flying home from Nebraska in November with one of the survivors. And I thought, I'm done with this work in so many ways. Just, I was not inspired, not intentional, none of that. And we got up to about 10,000 feet, and I realized she was pushing me out of the way. And I was like, what the hell? You know, I mean, she'd never flown before. So I was trying to be nice because she was all over my armrest. And then I realized she pushed me completely out of the way because she was taking photos out the window. And everything had been so gray, not just my heart, but the whole weekend. The sky was gray, the buildings were gray, everything was just depressing. And we had broken through the clouds, and the moon was full. It was a super moon.
Wow.
And it was haloed and stunning, and the clouds had all this light in them. And when she finished taking pictures, she just looked at me and she goes, you know, I didn't know there was a sky above the clouds.
Wow.
She had been in a foster home till 6th grade, horribly abused, and then out on the streets and under prison beds and under bridges, and just no time to imagine the universe. And, you know, I just said, Sophia, you know, I'm good for another 5 years. I really am. I'm good, because I forget sometimes that people don't know that there is a vast expanse of space and all kinds of places that we get to do this work. So if y'all keep doing this justice work, more people are going to see the sky above the clouds.
Thank you.
So,
And I want to say thank you to you, because I had Lois, I can always remember Lois DeBerry in a conversation with me one time saying that what she thought that every woman ought to do is reach back and pull another female forward. And you do that so graciously and on every day.
thank you very much. So I'll see y'all in October.
October.
October. Thank you so much, Becca. We appreciate it.
Peace.
Thank you. And everybody, just remember, watch our website page and we'll send out an email. I'm trying to confirm Larry and Sarah Lee for a summer book review, and I will get that out.
Okay.
Okay.
And can you also let me know when my dues come up? I'm a member, but I can't even remember. You know?
Absolutely. I will. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
you.
Good night.
Okay, bye-bye.